Okay, today I'm going to start with what I think is a major issue, and that is you've got geopolitical chaos, and it's been driven by two leaders, two countries. Donald Trump in the USA, Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. They're creating chaos, super chaos worldwide in this situation we're in. And why is that? Two important factors: fear and insecurity. This is what's driving these two leaders, and this is what is pushing their countries into the situation of geopolitical chaos around the world, which is a state of pain and suffering and far from benevolence, harmony, and balance and abundance for all. Now, I'm going to start with Chris Norland. Nice guy, South Korean guy, lived most of his life in the States. He's living in South Korea with a young lady now, and they're trying to create a family. This is what everybody in life's trying to do. Just live a good, happy life. Just full stop. Nothing more than that. Nothing less, nothing more. People make it into all sorts of different things. Whatever turns your crank. Let's make it simple. You want pain and suffering? You want benevolence, harmony, and abundance for all. And let's just keep it at that. So let's go to Chris here.
So we got to talk about what's going on in the Middle East, as apparently there was just a new attack. This is your headline: Americans injured in Iranian missile strike on Kuwaiti airbase. And I think it was 5 people have been injured. It said about 5 people, including both contractors and active duty personnel, so a mix of be it military or other, suffered minor injuries. And then you have 1 Reaper drone was destroyed, and at least 1 other was seriously damaged. And these things cost about $30 million. So 5 people hurt. We lost at least $30 million, and then maybe another 10 or 20 onto that. So maybe we lost $50 million from this latest round of attack. And basically, as the costs mount up and we start to lose assets and such, the Trump kids will come in and say, hey, I've got these new drones that'll be fantastic. And it'll replace all the assets that we've lost. And Trump will say, oh, well, there's this enemy in the Middle East and we got to keep sending more assets and all of our money over there. And, this side hits that side.
So this is a disturbing trend in the U.S. Trump's family, it's all self-enrichment, right from the top to the bottom. And I'm going to provide another example, the poly markets. Now you're gambling upon gambling. And who's running the poly markets? Donald Trump Jr. has got his hands in deep, him and his cabal. And so you're just gambling on the markets. Really smart. Let's just gamble on everybody's lives. This is what's happening. People are profiting, and it's not you, the regular Joe. Regular Joe, the regular Mo, and Aunt Sarah, and the rest of the people.
That side hits that side and keep going around in fresh attacks. They were actually talking about this on the Joe Rogan show of all things. Why don't you have a listen here?
War thing, but I like that.
You don't like the concept?
But here's the thing. Joe Rogan, he's got a huge following. And this is what Americans... Do Americans ever leave their country? Do they know what's going on outside the boundary of the nation? Actually, most people don't. But they listen to a lot of these people, like Joe Rogan, easily influenced by these people, which makes sense because through the left and right frontal lobes into the upper cortex, you're constantly being fed information into the reporter and the recorder of your existence. And that's your mind. And you don't realize you're being programmed. Unless you consciously change and are aware of the patterns of your behavior, nothing will change in your life. Just a life tip for you. Let's move back to Joe Rogan, etc.
That Iran can no longer have nuclear weapons? I think that's better than a UFC fight.
That is a good concept.
Right?
However, I don't necessarily know there's a clear way to get out of this. And if you know what we did in Afghanistan for 20 years.
Yeah, there was a clear way out of this. Don't bother getting in it to begin with. It's not like Iran's shooting bombs right at Los Angeles, is it? Mind you, Trump wouldn't care if LA got bombed, but Florida, he might have some concern.
Years and how much American taxpayer dollars were spent and how many people lost their lives.
But in Afghanistan, it felt like they were just sweeping out like goat farmers and guys hiding in caves. Whereas here, there's a directive where they're preventing a rebel country from having a bomb that could annihilate portions of our planet.
That's
so
true.
I think that's a much clearer and more positive agenda than...
All right, so they're trying to argue whether or not we're going to be in a 20-year war, right, essentially. And I just told you just today, I guess, you know, we lost maybe at least $30 million, maybe 50, something in that range. Now we're talking about, okay, when we're in Afghanistan for 20 years, are we going about caves and attacking goat farmers? Essentially, it's what their words. The thing with Iran right now, the unemployment is really bad right there. Rents are high.
Let's pivot in a different direction. The fact of the matter is, any American-led war pretty much has been just a waste of time and money. Trying to exert their will on others for the sake of democracy, or is it a misguided democracy because their rule of law and democracy right now is open for question? Nonetheless, you look at Vietnam War, that was a fail. The only war that really had any merit, but let's look at the fails. Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, and now Iran. Iran, why? Because the Strait of Hormuz was open. 2015, you had a deal signed by Obama that allowed atomic energy scientists to regularly go right into Iran and monitor any uranium enrichment. And you've changed that for what purpose? That's the real question you need to ask. But South Korean war, which still hasn't been solved, believe it or not, but the fact of the matter is South Korea is an entity that has benefited, and they have helped benefit the world with their existence. And this is the important thing. But that is the only positive out of, and you got to remember the South Korean war was an international effort as well. This Iran war, just Israel and the United States initiating it, expecting the world to kowtow to their needs, which that's really not a good way to deal with people. Just bullying people to your way of thinking helps no one. Let's go back to this video.
Inflation is bad. Like, just regular people on the ground, they're not worried about coming to attack Indiana or Iowa or whatever. I'm just being frank with you guys. And for people who are MAGA who watch this stuff, like, do you really think they're gonna come bomb West Virginia? No, seriously, like, do you really think so? It's ridiculous. The whole thing is ludicrous. And so there's different angles you can talk about when you talk about this war. So this person's saying, well, they shouldn't have a weapon, right? Thing is, like, America's got a ton of nuclear weapons. They do. And so we always come across as hypocrites when we say you can't have said thing. But Iran is really far away from having said thing. And even our own intel is like, no, they're not an imminent threat.
Wiping out guys living in the hills of Afghanistan, creating opium.
That's true if it made sense. The problem is I had Scott Horton on the podcast explaining what is actually involved in making depleted uranium and making it weapons grade and what would have to be done in order to get it to a bomb level. It's very difficult.
Right.
It's not as simple. And they weren't nearly capable of doing that.
Not nearly, but pursuing.
It's a good...
Not nearly, but pursuing. Who was pursuing? Who told you that? Did God come down in a dream and say they are pursuing? This is what I mean about fear. Narcissistic way of living based upon a leader's influence on a country.
Question, because they were being, he was also saying they were being inspected on a regular basis, and essentially this is Israel wanting us to go to this war.
Yeah,
Israel wants well, and it makes sense. If I was Israel, if we were America.
So, and this is, you know, Rogan then talking about Israel, and I show you guys this kind of stuff because I know Rogan's moronic. I'm not stupid. I can see it for myself, but this is the sort of average level of manga people how they talk and how they think. Some guys like, oh yeah, in Afghanistan, goat herders, but we can't let Iran blow everything up. All right, like and they don't think in terms of like, okay, what if, for example, we brought our troops home, not put them in harm's way? What if we weren't like out defending Israel's interest, right? Opposed to, what if we just...
What do you mean defending Israel's interest? Since 1938, 1939, the Israeli Zionist right-wing movement, and I say right-wing movement because not every Zionist is right-wing, not every Zionist has an issue with Palestinians and sharing land that was meant to be shared. So since 1938-39, the Israelis have been trying to take land. The United Nations and the world agreed, and British Palestine became a situation in 1947 where Israel could create a statehood within a shared lands with the Palestinians. And since that time, the Israelis have just been seizing land through force, through war, claim it's for security. But you have to understand one thing. Israel is part of the problem. It's not a one-way street. Most streets are two-way streets. Violence begets violence. Power grabbing, taking land, settling on it, going against international law, international land lease agreements, all in the name of security, is a false narrative. It's an abuse of privilege. And we all need to take a step back and get back to a state of coexistence. And this is where it's been an issue. And the human element of trying to bash somebody to your way of being in existence is not a good way to live life.
Stayed home and like invested in our own country, be it education, be it infrastructure, right? Mass transit. What about, public parks? What about healthcare? Any number of things. And I know Mongo said, oh, you're so dumb, Chris. I hate public parks. I hate them, right? And it's like, I don't know, how do you have conversations with these kind of people? Because I guess the Joe Rogan audience or whatever, they just want UFC fights at the White House. I mean, it should be stupid, though. And I look at how regular people are feeling right now. Credit defaults are through the roof. People are falling behind on payments. Like, costs are still quite elevated. And we're talking about, I'm really so concerned about Iran. And I'm just telling you guys, the average Iranian doesn't even know where Indiana is on the map. They don't care.
And Mexico had nukes pointed at us or whatever. It's not nukes, but you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, if they were trying to build a nuke, if Mexico and America were constantly in conflict, and Mexico was trying to build a nuclear bomb, that would be a good reason where America would want to go to Mexico. Like, hey, you can't have a nuclear bomb. This is Israel's position. Right. So Israel's right.
Yeah, so why can Russia, why can North Korea, why can China, why can Israel, why can the United States have nuclear weapons and the Iranians cannot? That's the question. Why not? Because you're worried about or living in a state of fear? USA under Trump, if he had his way, he would have friggin' sent nuclear weapons and eradicated Iran and its people. Luckily, there are still some people that are holding him back. But if you look at his tweets, because he directs people, leads by tweets. Can you imagine that? White House now is a tweet bird farm. Tweet bird farm. Twitter tweets. XCOM. Musk. All this Epstein people. Putin was part of Epstein. William Barr, former attorney under the Trump administration, won. Epstein people. Peter Thiel. Zuckerberg. Facebook. Told you, Musk, Palantir, etc., etc. Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, Anthony, a.k.a. Tony Blair, former PM of Britain, all the Epstein class. And it's a tragedy. The Americans, under Trump too, $4.5 trillion can go to the top 1% and 10%. Can you imagine what that $4.5 trillion would do to the bottom percentile of the United States population? But you don't see that. This is where the imbalance keeps on being an imbalance because we're allowing that to be. It creates pain and suffering, and you can get away with that pain. You can keep getting away with. What do you want? Do you want pain and suffering? Do you want to live pain and suffering? Or do you want benevolence, harmony, and abundance? And it's really as simple as that. You give your power away to these people. These people have their interests at heart. They don't care about you. It's about time you started being kind to yourself and allowed a situation where we can all be kind to each other. And that's really the important factor here. And the message I'm trying to express.
There with Iran. They're close
Right.
enough. They're throwing missiles at each other. I get why they would want it. I just don't know if it's a good thing for America. And I don't know if there's a way out of it.
Well,
And there is a way out of it. Just bring our troops home. It's not that complicated, right? It's so stupid. This whole thing is so stupid. And, you know, this is also, think of it this way. They never address the point of, hey, Israel has a nuclear program, right? So think about it this way. Just be a little bit creative here. What if Israel's like, you know what? We're not going to have any nukes, and therefore, Iran, you don't have any nukes, and you make some sort of treaty regarding that. But this idea that Israel's like, okay, we're going to have nukes, and we're going to, you know, order our buddies, the USA, to bomb you if you try to do anything at all. The whole thing's stupid. I hope it's really clear when we look at this stuff. But I want you to understand, though, that all this is based on perpetuating a forever war.
So look at the bottom point here. Treaty status. Israel is one of the few nations worldwide that is not a signatory to the United Nations Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Full stop. Why is that? Small little dot that wasn't in existence prior to 1947. They keep taking land from the Palestinians. They've abused that privilege, still abusing that privilege. You really have to question why. And I'm going to state why. You have two leaders, Donald Trump, Benjamin Netanyahu, that are taking the people down a personal rabbit hole that is based on fear and insecurity of the leaders. And they're taking everybody with them and everybody's following, just like pack mentality, leader of the pack, leader of the pack. So let's go to the next screen. What's the next screen? It's not going to be Chinese policy change, but here we're going to different take on what's happening with Israel. USA is right there holding Israel's hand. They grazed Gaza. Now they're grazing Beirut and Lebanon. Lebanon's turning into rubble just like Gaza.
This week on Double Down Newswatch, a harrowing in-depth interview on the horror of being detained by the Israelis.
Welcome to Israel. You're going to really enjoy this. He had an American.
And here's the thing. I'm in Canada. Canadians had to go through this. This is actual experience of Canadians as well, trying to help others. Do-gooders trying to help others. And this is what happens to them. And this is, you really need to know this is the reality. This is what's really going on.
Accent, and he said, I want to kill someone today, and it potentially might be you. I was vaginally raped by one of the male soldiers.
An interview with a man who says the police tried to recruit him as a double agent. He decided to speak to us instead.
Offered to protect me, protect my family, said everything would be okay if I helped them, offered me benefits, financial benefits. We're not saying you can go and commit serious crime, but we can turn a blind eye for certain things. I mean, I thought this only happened in movies.
As the Americans turn their sights on Cuba, we look at conditions on the island and ask, what's the US endgame?
I think there is an irony in that he's now looking at attacking Cuba to distract from his previous distraction. He wants that fix he got from that quick Venezuelan operation.
And has Andy Burnham got what it takes to be Prime Minister? We ask a Manchester journalist who's watched him up close for the last 6 years. This is your weekly look at the world through the eyes of independent media. Welcome to Israel. You're going to enjoy it. That's what activists from the global aid flotilla were told after they were seized by the Israelis in international waters. The activists all acknowledged that their treatment hardly compares with what is done to Palestinians. But days of horror followed. I spoke to Australian filmmaker Juliette Lamont, who was on both this flotilla and the previous one in October last year. I must warn you, some may find her account distressing. Where was it exactly that the boat you were on was intercepted by the Israelis?
We were south of Cyprus, and I think that we're about 270 nautical miles from Gaza. So we were intercepted in international waters. But at the time, because we saw, what looked like to be sort of 17-year-olds in balaclavas in broad daylight, it wasn't quite as scary initially. And they drove the boat like they stole it, literally. I think maybe it was a 35-minute journey that was really fast with guns in our faces. And then we arrived at the, monumental, monstrous prison ship that a lot of people have talked about. And then that was the threshold of it becoming, a very, very frightening, fearing for your life situation. They knew my name when they dragged me onto the deck. I was cable tied, my ankles were shackled. They put so much water under my face, I had no ability to move, and every time I tried to get away from the water to stop sort of gurgling and drowning, they'd slap me again, stand on the back of my legs. I thought that was my number was up, and I'd only been on that boat for about 20 minutes. I thought that I was going to drown. And that was the welcome to Israel, because that's exactly what they said when I got on the boat. Welcome to Israel. You're going to really enjoy this, is what they said. Other bodies would be thrown onto me. It was sort of like sardined, and you could feel other people kind of, in different, different levels of anguish, lots of screams, lots of thudding. Then I was dragged along a corridor. They looked at my passport. They recognised that I'd been there before, and they told me that he had an American accent, and he said, "I want to kill someone today, and it potentially might be you." And then I was dragged towards what we sort of ended up calling a torture tunnel. It's a shipping container that kind of had an entrance to it where you could vaguely see the silhouette of 5 soldiers inside, and I was pushed inside that space. I was slapped and kicked. I was sexually assaulted. They threw me on the ground. They broke my coccyx, kicked me in the back. And the strangest thing, and the thing that I remember the most is not the blows, and it was not the sort of like the internal sexual assault. It was this really, really big man who was pulling at my hair like a child, like a boy would in a playground, doing it to a girl that he didn't really understand. It was really infantile and puerile.
Juliet, I apologise for being intrusive here, but when you say that you were sexually assaulted, it's important this. What exactly did they do?
So they wrenched my trousers and my underwear down, and it felt like that it was inserted with a hand. It wasn't a gun. I found out later that other people had guns inserted inside them. I don't think that it was a penis, but there was so much going on. But I was vaginally raped by one of the male soldiers. As I was, you basically, your head's down. They're putting you in a stress position, so your head's down, and your sort of posterior is very sort of available to be, dealt with, and your hands are behind your back, and your ankles are shackled. So, it's while you're being sort of jostled, hit, sworn at in the dark. I mean, it's a really discombobulating, horrific experience. Then a door was opened, and I was thrown out into an open kind of area where I could see probably maybe about 60 people on the deck of that boat. And my daughter, Isla, who is 25, ran up to me. My mouth was bleeding. They'd punched me in the face. And I was just sort of surrounded by love. And I was just really, it was really nice to see. The daughter was all right. And we talked about, how much violence and barbarity she had endured. And then, before you've even sort of worked out where you are, what's going to go on, what the level of threat is, you hear these howls of torture and pain happening in the place that you've just been thrown out of. And that goes on and on and on and on with each person. And some of them are like the most horrific ones, some are quicker than others, and people are getting sort of spat out of this horror container with broken ribs. People were tasered in the face. Like some severe injuries. And this kind of look of, because you're coming from a dark space as well as being brutalized and then into the light. I just remember, and I'm a filmmaker, so I remember just this look of these people kind of being like birthed out of hell into this like absolute terror, but then this other look would sort of wash over everybody of like, maybe I'm safe, because they could see that it wasn't a whole load of soldiers. It was, it was the people that they'd been sailing with.
Was there a difference in the way different activists were treated? For example, depending on where they came from originally, whether they'd been on the previous flotilla and so on?
I mean, it definitely felt like people of colour got a bashing, and I know that from the last mission there was definitely a sort of racial aspect to the violence. But this one really did. I mean, there was a woman who was 70. Her bones were broken. It was a bit arbitrary, but everybody was beaten. But yes, some people to extreme levels.
So how long did it take to reach Israel? How long were you on that prison boat for?
I think it was 2.5 days.
Where did you sleep, for example?
You are sleeping inside a shipping container that has nothing in it. It's just steel and it's freezing. Some people were suffering hypothermia. So you are literally using people's body heat, like curled up with people that you know or you don't know, to stay warm. People would, sort of demand, bang on the sides of the shipping containers for water, for medication. None of those things ever occurred. Really sort of regularly you'd get this accent, and it was this American accent again, and it would be like, get behind the black line, and that was really towards the end of this open space. Maybe it was like 3 meters by maybe 6, and you're literally trying to get 100 people sandwiched in there, and they would say, if you don't, we're going to kill you. And then they'd open fire with stun grenades that was so loud that one of my friends had to have an ear operation, and it looks like he might be deaf. And then the rubber bullets would come, and some of them hit people, direct hits, smashed and broken ankles, and someone had a broken arm from the impact of those bullets. So it was game on. I think everyone on that boat thought that we were going to be executed, and that's not an exaggeration.
What happened once you got to Israel?
Dragged off the boats, a new level of I can't remember, I think maybe these guys had black uniforms. It's like they have so many levels of uniforms and sort of, awfulness. Alsatians, I think we're like cable tied again, shackles back on, dragged off the boat onto Ashdod. I'm 5 foot, I'm not very tall, with 3 men holding me in the stress position. My feet were about 1.5 meters off the ground. Thought they were going to rip my shoulder out. Ben Gvir is in front of me, with the cameras. He always does that. He did that last time. Baby killers, Arab lovers, Jew haters, his usual stuff. And then you're processed by, different police officers or immigration, strip search, sexually assaulted again by 2 women this time.
Juliet, again, apologies for being intrusive, but when you say sexually assaulted, what do you mean?
So, like, stripped naked, groped, my breasts were groped, my buttocks were fake fingernails. For some reason, the Israeli female soldiers really like acrylic nails. It's just bizarre. and then internally searched when it was just like, what is it that I have? So, but it's not professional. It doesn't feel like it's for any reason. It's just to humiliate you, dehumanize you, tell you that you're an Arab lover, tell you that you're an animal. So that occurred again for me, particularly triggering because I experienced 10 years of child sexual abuse. So you're sort of there going, why is this happening when I'm 55? When I was trying to deliver baby food, when I was in international waters, this is complete, it's really cognitively so hard to absorb.
And this is key. She mentioned they were in international waters. And this you have to understand.
Get any assistance at all from the Australian embassy, the Australian consulate?
Our consulate was there, but all they did really was take photographs of us looking vaguely happy, but didn't give us any water, any ability to talk to our families, no, even money. You don't have any money, you don't have anything. They sort of strip you of all of your belongings. So really, it did feel like the Australian government, it was kind of performative.
Did they speak to the Israelis at all? Did they bring any pressure on the Israelis in terms of the treatment you were receiving?
We are asking at the moment because there's 11 of us and most of us have been sexually assaulted and have broken ribs. My friend has, from blunt force from a gun, has a pulmonary contusion in his lung. My daughter was syringed with an unknown substance. There was 3 cases of that. We're asking for a meeting with our Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, and as yet he is not consenting to that. And our Foreign Minister Penny Wong has said that she thinks that Ben Gvir shouldn't have posted the video, and that's kind of we're at a kind of not much is happening.
Juliet, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, so now I'm going to move to my next video. It was pretty graphic. And this was, originally these people were captured just off the coast of Cyprus in international waters. International waters being seized and taken to Israel. Now we have a Canadian here, Charlie Angus. And here's another. Canadian kidnapped by Israel exposes abuse.
Resistors from all over, Charlie Angus here. Today's episode is vitally important. It's slightly longer than what we normally produce, but we believe we could not cut a single second out of this interview. The interview is with Sebastian Tao, the young Canadian who was kidnapped in international waters by Israel, along with 427 other activists who were bringing food, baby formula, medical supplies, along with doctors and nurses and reconstruction teams to help end the crisis in Gaza. They were seized in international waters illegally by Israel, and they suffered horrific levels of abuse. You may have recalled that we were asking you over a week ago to contact your MP to help Sebastian get free. His mother, Anita Wittenberg, and sister Emma were on with Midas Canada, and he is free, and he is back in Canada, and he has a powerful story to tell. I think there's 2 elements that I really just want to focus on right now. One is obviously the darkness. He is going to talk about the abuse and the violence perpetrated by the Israeli state against unarmed citizen humanitarian workers, and a trigger warning, talking about the sexual assaults and rapes by Israeli officials against innocent people who are trying to end the starvation and the medical disaster in Gaza. The other element, though, is how Sebastian represents the best of who we are as a nation. He represents Canada's values at its finest, and his sense of determination and hope will leave you feeling that whatever you can do will make a difference. He speaks of the need for all of us to step up at this time in the face of darkness, to defy the darkness, to show those values that are fundamental to who we are, and yes, fundamental to what it means to be a Canadian at this time in the world. I urge you to watch this interview.
Not just be Canadian, just be a human being, treating other human beings with dignity and respect. That's all that we need to do. It's a very simple process. It starts by being kind to yourself. If you can't be kind to yourself, how are you going to be kind to your neighbor? Like, it just makes no sense. And as I stated previously, this geopolitical chaos we're experiencing now, this is a worldwide issue, is being created by Donald Trump, the United States et al., and Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, far-right Zionist movement et al., and everybody in the world's paying for this pain and suffering that is just nonsensical. This is not how you do things. We're not in the wild. We're human beings. We need to treat human beings like human beings. Forget about this separation, class distinction. You're a human being, and the person beside you and in your family are human beings also. Need to be treated with dignity, with respect, and human kindness, coming from the heart.
Sebastian Tao, we are very, very proud to have you home in Canada. Proud to have you on Midas Canada.
There was a revolution that offered a solution. If there was a revolution, no one came. If they sent you down to save you, gave you tools instead of favors. If there was a revolution, no one came. I see that. Will I see you there?
Hey there, Midas Canada viewers and resistors from all over the world. We're going to follow up today with a really important story. Remember, we were talking about the Canadians who were kidnapped in international waters by Israel, held in deplorable conditions. That also includes citizens from all over the world, citizens from countries that you're watching. And we had on Anita Wittenberg and her daughter Emma, who were talking about Sebastian Tao, who'd been kidnapped by Israel. We asked you to help out, to push the government to get him and the other aid workers on the flotilla to Gaza free. And our hopes came true. Sebastian is home. We are thrilled to have him on the show to explain what happened and to tell us what he saw of the abuses and the situation that is ongoing in Gaza right now, ongoing in Israel against the Palestinians. As we talk this morning, we learned that the Israeli Defense Minister, Israel Katz, is talking now openly once again about the forcible deportation of the Palestinian people from Gaza. This meets clearly Article 7 of the Crimes Against Humanity under the Statute of Rome. Israel's been accused of many of the crimes of humanity, against humanity, including deliberate starvation, withholding of food, targeting hospitals, killing civilians, killing journalists.
But I want to interject here a bit and make sure that people know the international criminal courts that have actually judges have been targeted by the financial system, which is controlled by the United States worldwide. And this is the reality. The International Criminal Court judges around the world have been targeted by the financial system of the United States of America because they control the SWIFT system, sanction who they want, when they want, at the whim of a guy by the name of Donald J. Trump. And this is a serious matter for us to allow this to happen, to continue to happen, and to knowingly be aware of these instances of abuse, of the dignity of human beings. They're just trying to live a life, happiness, love, with their families and others.
And those attempting to document the crimes. These are very, very serious issues, and this is why we wanted to get Sebastian on the show, because Sebastian is an eyewitness and is also one of the defenders of the rule of law by trying to get to Gaza, by trying to raise the flag of democracy and peace in an area of such brutal conflict. Sebastian, welcome back to Canada.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be home.
Right off the top, you're 24 years old?
24, yeah.
Why did you try to get to Gaza?
Well, I became involved in the movement against the genocide 3 years ago as a student. And I realized last fall while I was watching the flotilla that there has been a very long history now, over a decade, of attempts to bring humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip by the sea and also by the land. But the flotillas in particular, it's a very long and very interesting history. Um, the Mavi Marmara is one case in which uh, citizen aid workers were actually murdered, over 10 of them, by the Israeli occupation when they were intercepted. And last year, as I watched the flotilla, I looked at it and I realized that it seemed to me the largest and most concrete direct action that people were taking to not only challenge the Israeli occupation's genocide, but to also try their best to bring vital aid to people who are undergoing enforced starvation. So when I saw that, I thought to myself that I might try to join because I had graduated last year, and I realized that I wanted to continue my organizing, but I wasn't sure in what way at that point. So I realized then that I would apply for the flotilla, and I was accepted in April.
So, one of the things we see, of course, is media and Canadian media are incredibly complicit. It always seems that we're getting our news feed from the Israeli Defense Force on anything, and then CBC parses what the Israeli Defense Force says, and then explains what the Israeli Defense Force says, and then follows up, and then has at the very end something about what Israel's being accused of. And in the case of the flotilla, it's always being sort of seen and portrayed as some kind of like pro-Palestinian activist trying to run the blockade and break in. But you had medical aid, you had food, you had doctors, nurses. Explain what the flotilla is doing, because the fact that it's falling to ordinary people to try and get food aid in when the rest of the world is sitting on the sidelines, I think is really vital. So what was the nature of the aid and the people heading to Gaza?
Absolutely. It was, it's a civilian-led organization, so it's filled with people from all around the world. But the core of it, yes, is to bring baby formula, fuel, food, dry goods, medical supplies, sanitary supplies. We loaded our ships for over 2 days with this sort of supplies. And the crew on board was not only made up of general participants such as me, just activists who are there to help in whatever they can, but it was made up crucially of doctors, of carpenters and builders. And the original plan was, once we had broken the siege and gotten to the shores of Gaza, is that those of us who would be unloading the medical aid would unload the medical aid and the humanitarian aid, the food, and so on. And then there would be a large select group of us who would go into Gaza and work with the people of Gaza to help, one, build new things. We were bringing building material, help do renovations to whatever we can. And then the other group would be doctors who were planning on doing shifts and taking over shifts for as long as they could at whatever medical facilities are left in Gaza, and giving some of the very, very hardworking and long-suffering doctors in Gaza a short break for however long they could. Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the situation, there's supposed to be a ceasefire. The genocide is supposed to be over, thanks to Donald Trump's board of peace. Like Donald Trump's board of peace, where basically gangster states pay him $1 billion, and they are overseeing the situation in Gaza right now. The latest reports that I've been reading from Human Rights Watch, once again, withholding food, more and more people going hungry, continuing attacking civilians and murdering the unarmed, as well as what we're seeing in Lebanon with the bombing of hospitals, the bombing of ambulances, the destruction of villages. Plus, add to that, horrific crimes now being reported against unarmed Palestinians in the West Bank. What is the situation in Gaza? Has has this border peace, has the genocide stopped? Has the denial of food aid stopped? Why? What is the situation that people need to know about?
Yeah, there's no genocide that has stopped. It's ongoing. Just in the last few days, as I got back to the airport and was surrounded by friends and family, I had read earlier that day about a 15-year-old girl and a 6-year-old girl who were slaughtered in a targeted missile attack on a refugee camp in Gaza. A 25-year-old man was also killed, I believe, in the same refugee camp. And this is just a trickle of the news that comes in every single day. The ceasefire was supposed to be brokered between the Israeli occupation forces and the Palestinian resistors and Hamas. But it seems that, as always, it's only on the Palestinian side. The Israelis continue to slaughter civilians. And the situation in Gaza, in terms of aid, has not shifted at all, I believe, since the beginning of the genocide. I mean, it's just imagine what's left of Gaza is it's well over 1 million people. It's about 2 million people stuffed into an area that, and when I was in occupied Palestine, we were driven on prison buses from Ashdod port, which is just north of Gaza, down to the infamous Kityad prison, which is southeast of Gaza. And that trip only took an hour and a half. I'm not kidding. The entire length of Gaza I've now traveled. And imagine that length, that hour and a half, at 25 miles by 5 miles, is stuffed with 2 million people. And they have, in the entirety of Gaza, I think 4 aid sites that the Israelis control. And maybe 2 of them are open for about, I think, 15 minutes a day or something. And not only that, but when people run to get food or medical supplies, whatever it is, they're sort of treated as firing practice repeatedly and continuously. There has been so many cases documented over the last 2 years and over the last year of the Israelis treating this as a sort of game and a sort of target practice where they set up some supposed aid and then kill them as Palestinians as they attempt to take that aid, the food or medical supplies, from the designated place where they're supposed to pick it up. Yeah, it's abhorrent.
Yeah, and these are not, wild allegations. They've been documented again and again and again. So what you're reporting is, anyone can go online and learn and see. But I want to ask you now about what happened when the Israelis in international waters, again, breaking international law, seized the vessels, seized the aid, and kidnapped you and the other aid workers. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, not only at the end of April did they come all the way to the western coast of Crete and try and capture the entire fleet and end up capturing the people on and holding hostage people on 22 boats, and then bringing back our comrades Tiago and Saif to solitary detention and in Israel. But then they, of course, once we had sailed, they attacked the rest of the fleet off the southwest coast of Cyprus. And so, to reaffirm again, if people are a bit fuzzy on their geography, both Cyprus and Crete are quite a ways away from the territorial and naval waters permitted to Israel. Both of the attacks took place within international waters. And when we were attacked, the Israeli warships and the Israeli speedboats didn't fly their flag, and every single one of them was wearing a mask. It reminded me of
Before he explains any further, it reminds me of ICE. Can you imagine that? ICE, under the direct rule of the administration and a guy by the name of Donald J. Trump, right in the United States of America, terrorizing people within the borders of the United States of America. And then here we have in international waters, United States of America using their military, Israel using their military in unjust manners. That's the reality.
The definition of terrorism that the CIA, the FBI, NSA, the U.S. counterterrorism, all the official imperial definitions of terrorism is that it is the use of violence or threat thereof for a political end. And so by their own definition, the Israelis terrorized us and used terrorism to capture us and take us hostage. And in my experience, I was among the fleet that we had managed to escape well into the day that they began to intercept our boats. And so it was late in.
So where are the good guys? All we've got here is terrorists against terrorists. United States and Israel acting as terrorists against terrorists. Where are the good guys? Do we have any good guys in this saga? This really is a saga of abuse, of mankind, of human beings, when people can do things very, very differently. I'm not going to go any more into this concept. I think the point's truly been made. And this is a serious problem. A lot of people in North America quietly going about their lives. All you're worried about is the price of gas. And this is what's really going on around the world. This is what your leaders are doing. And you really think this kind of behavior is warranted? You want to promote this kind of behavior to others? No way to live a life. I want to live my life in harmony, in happiness, in a loving environment, not have to worry about anything. Worry about your health, worry about food. You have the Horn of, Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz was wide open. Now energy, we're going to have an energy crisis because of this that's been brought upon everybody in the world. So there's going to be an energy crisis and a food crisis. This is no way to have to live. This is not good. You can make that decision. You can keep advocating for pain and suffering. I don't want to live with that kind of way of living. So you can make a choice. Pain and suffering, benevolence, harmony, and abundance. And it's really that simple. Your mind can come up with a lot of excuses to push back and tell you, I've got to worry about this, that, and this. Who's telling you have to worry about this, that, and this? Who's using fear to manipulate you, the people? Start by being kind by yourself. Have people that are in positions of power that serve you, the people, not the 1%, not the 10%. That $4.5 trillion, that big, beautiful bill, went to the people. They can afford to deal with inflation. That should have gone to the average people, and it didn't. You got paid off by saying, oh, you don't have to claim tips. Beautiful. This is how they abuse your privileges. This is how they abuse you. Oh, you don't have to pay taxes. We'll reduce your taxes. You don't have to pay taxes on tips. But I'll give $4.5 trillion to the top 1% and the top 10%. They're going to create another framework with AI to further abuse you. This is the reality of what's happening. In Canada, we had a conservative government that did not want a deficit. They said, a deficit of $80 billion, $90 billion is bad. Should have only been $48 billion, and even that was beyond what a conservative really wants. Meanwhile, once you understand the population of Canada to the U.S. is approximately 17%, if 17%, just take 10% of the $4.5 trillion, would have meant $450 billion deficit in Canada. Do you know how much $450 billion would help average people and change affordability? There are other policy decisions on a municipal, provincial level that need to be changed as well, but you're being held back by Republican and conservatives. Conservatives, now, that's really just the Reform Party. Republican, that's really just mega party. And the general public is being used and abused for the benefit of just a few. And the Epstein cover-up is a good part of it. And this you should know. This is what you should realize. Make a choice now to be kind to yourself, be kind to your neighbor. Let's get rid of this pain and suffering, move into benevolence, harmony, and abundance. Thanks for watching. Take care. Love and peace to everyone. Ciao for now.